Along with gorse and hedgehogs, one of those quaint idiosyncratic familiarities to have been imported from Mother England was duelling. Broadly, two blokes with above average testosterone and a beef against each other, seconds on the sideline dropping bogeyed hankies, hoping they wouldn't become collateral. Duelling was indeed a thing in New Zealand. 35 occasions are taken as read, although its illegality makes the record somewhat grey come opaque. Getting caught could of course lead you doing time. That's why they took place away from prying eyes and witnesses. Beaches are amongst the more popular locations to rumble. The last known case was in 1935, and that took place in Queen Street, Auckland, in an office. That involved swords as the weapon of choice, and miraculously, considering the small battleground, no digits were lost. Why would someone want to so badly kill another person they would put their own life at risk in the process? A quick scan of the modus behind this drastic option reveals a litany of pettiness. There weren't the reasons one normally thinks about when the subject comes up. None of the standard gallantry of protecting one's name, slaps across the face with gloves. Rather disagreements over the integrity of a third person. In another example, the way the Maori War was being conducted. And of all things, a misthrown orange at a party. Did anyone get killed? Yes, indeed. A rendition of that duel, the only picture I could find on the net, is on your screen. Not the first incident of a duel in the country. That one occurred 11 years prior, and I'll cover that shortly. Nor was it even the first duel involving one of the participants, a lawyer called William Brewer. His first beef was with a surveyor called Kelly in 1840. Kelly survived literally by a hair's breadth. Brewer's bullet dislodging Kelly's wig. You can't make this stuff up, I tell you. It was now 1844, and Brewer was now facing off against another lawyer, Hugh Ross, in the back of Stewart Street, Wellington. That's what it looked like around the time, minus the shrubberies. This time Brewer's shot was more accurate. It struck Ross in the balls, which, as you can imagine, meant the show was over. Thanks for coming. Not that Ross would be able to come in the medical sense of the word ever again. He died 7 days later. When Ross went down, the witnesses scarpered, thinking he was dead. It was only after 15 minutes later they thought they'd better check and found him to be alive. Well, at least in the short term. A later coroner's report found there was no way to prove who and how the wound was inflicted. The Brewers Ross bout is undoubtedly New Zealand's most famous. I would pay to watch lawyers shoot it out on Sky, wouldn't you? As a quick sidestep, in my research I came across what is now on your screen. US subscribers and viewers, take particular heed. If guns weren't already an issue in the US, you now have your chance to bring back the glory days. Be the 16th person to sign this petition. Forwards, Paul, forwards. Still, none of these duels are half as interesting as the one I finally got to. The first documented duel in 1833. You could do an entire video on the two characters, starting with a brief resume of character number one, the well-travelled 26-year-old English-born Joel Polack, with one L. There is only one picture of Polack in existence, and that's the back of him in the John Williams painting 1845 entitled Three Maoris Bargaining. He travelled to the Bay of Islands in 1831 to paint a better picture of the backwash that was New Zealand at the time. 4 years later, Darwin would describe the majority of Europeans he encountered as the refuge of society. If you haven't already seen it, and you are rather thick-skinned enough not to get all blubbery, I've done a video on his brief visit. Polack holds two firsts in fledgling New Zealand history. Number one, he was the first Jew to make his or her home here. If you remember the television program Minder and the lead character Arthur Daly, you will get a good handle on Polack. He was a trader, import and export, wholesale and retail. His land and house, Parramatta, once dominated the foreshore in Russell. Parramatta was also the de facto HQ of the local neighbourhood watch group. Criminals beware. These vigilantes weren't going to bother with the coppers if they caught you in the act. They weren't adverse to literally tarring and feathering felons. As a Jew, he was able to be at arm's length of the Methodists, Anglicans and Catholics battling for the control of souls in the new domain. Not that he got on with one notable amongst the locals. He had an ongoing feud with James Busby, who in modern terms was the Queen's representative in the colony, the biggest Whig and a bloke in dire need of one. It was Busby that signed the Treaty of Waitangi on behalf of the Crown. The aloof Polack became fluent in te reo and spent time integrating himself into the local Maori community, including shagging one of the local chief's daughters. I mentioned two first. The second one is a goodie. Joel Polack opened New Zealand's first commercial beer brewery, and with it started a long legacy of Jewish beer barons in New Zealand. He was also a notable author and artist. The drawing you have been looking at on your screen of Korororeka, the Old Russell, is by Polack. Now to the other fella, Ben Turner. That's the only photo I could dredge up on him, and by now you'll have deducted by his age he lived to tell the tale. Turner ended up in New Zealand in 1826 running a grog shop become store after arriving into the Southern Hemisphere on board an Australian convict ship. His crime that saw him banished from England to New South Wales for 7 years being what? Stealing 2 pieces of cheese. Until Polack came on the scene, moonshining operations were the go when it came to wholesale and recreational boozing. By the way, I've done a quick history of illegal moonshine whisky in New Zealand, and you'll find that in the description below, my friends. Onwards. Turner was somewhat of a religious outsider. He was Catholic, became matey with the first Catholic bishop, Pompelier, and then he had a falling out. Though not before he sold the Marist Order, what is now known as Pompelier Mission deal he made a tidy sum on. Became mates also with James Busby, and then had a falling out. For good measure, he married Hone Hiki's sister. After watching this video, you're probably thinking Coronation Street sounds like a reality television show. When the following happened, he was 37. In summary, Polack and Turner were rather prickly characters. Polack had had a guts full of Turner, accusing him of ripping people off, so it was he that challenged the older but more athletic Turner to a shoot-off on the beach. Only any actual shots were to be fired would take place in the wee smalls inside Polack's house. Turner got into a drinking session with his mates, and with the fire in the belly, he decided to bring the started kick-off time forward. In the middle of the night, Piss Turner, accompanied by 2 of his drinking buddies, knocked boldly on Polack's door, wanting him to come outside, duke it out. The sober Polack saw this wasn't going to be good, or an even contest, a one-on-one. He told them to piss off and come back later, and this enraged the trio, who broke down the door where Polack was waiting with his pistol. He let loose, striking Turner in the chin. Did this put an end to the proceedings? No. Turner and his group became even more enraged and dragged Polack down to the beach, where they proceeded to give him a dusting. For good measure, Mrs. Turner, nee Hiki, came upon the scene, and she proceeded to put the slipper into him as well. A half-dead Polack hobbled back home on his broken ankle, and he sought police intervention the following day. In a small community of less than 500 people, and Busby soon caught wind of the night's goings-on, and so his influence on the troublesome duo no doubt played a role in the authorities ignoring the complaints, sweeping the entire affair under the mat. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the first aborted duel to occur in this fine land. In case you're wondering, Polack shortly packed up and shifted to the US, where he died in 1882, aged 75. Turner died in Auckland in 1876, and he was close to 80. Despite all their bumps and grazes, they made it to really old bones for the time. A lot to pack into this one. I hope you enjoyed it and will give it a like or a comment. If this is your first time venturing here, press on that subscribe button. Each zero budget video I do takes me between 6 to 10 hours. Don't forget that video lurking in my vault about moonshine whisky in NZ. And oh yeah, if you like my content, there's a Canadian mirror version of this channel staring at you. Check it out as well. I will spot you next time, troops. Bye for now.